All right, when the name Brann Dailor comes up, most folks familiar with the progosphere are immediately going to recognize him as the drummer for Mastodon. Significantly fewer people, apparently, are going to recognize him as one-third of the band Arcadea. And no, I'm not talking about the 80s band made up of 3 out of 5 members of Duran Duran. That's different. Anyway, see, this modern-day Arcadea have finally released their second album just 8 years after their debut. Does it sound like Mastodon? No. Is it prog metal? Nope. What is synth metal? I do not know. Is the album any good? Well, hang on. Relax yourself. I will get to that in just a moment. Hey, Prog Doggins, Dave here, and this is Bleeding Edge with your not-so-weekly album review. Sorry, took a vacation. I like the beach. Sue me. And this time around, we are talking about Arcadea, not the 80s band, once again, in case you forgot already, those of you not paying attention. And the new album is The Exodus of Gravity, just their second album, with their original one debuting back in 2017. I guess we maybe thought they were gone. In the 8 years, though, they have changed their personnel a little bit. Now, returning, of course, are founding members Core Adams, known for his work and his very unusual guitar style. He's on synths. Brann Dailor, of course, known from Mastodon. He is doing vocals and drums. And Joao Nogueira, said with all the confidence of a person who knows he is mispronouncing it horribly, brings more synths. And he is replacing original member Rahim Amlani, who actually played guitars with them first time around, if I read correctly. Go to the internet, it tells you everything, right? So we got 12 songs, 49 minutes, which tells you they're not exceptionally long songs. And that's fine, not exactly proggy, but I don't know that this was ever promised to be a prog album. If the band didn't self-produce the album, I'll be damned. I don't know who did. I have looked, and I have not found anybody specifically listed as producer. So I'm going to say the band self-produced it. The band also claims this to be a concept album, which is basically about 5 billion years into the future. When humans are gone, AI rules, and AI apparently is starting to feel emotions again, and we get a return of things like love and empathy and all this other stuff. A rebirth on Earth. I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but that's how it came out. It's also apparently about wiggling asses. I'd look it up. It mentions it there. Before we start the breakdown, I just want to say don't forget to take a moment. If you like the video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel. That would be great. Help us grow. Meanwhile, also, here is my methodology for those of you new to the format. I categorize it in 4 areas, and I rate each of those categories on a scale of 1 to 5. Those categories being intellectual, innovative, technical, and emotional. And depending on how the raw score comes out after I average those 4 scores together, I might add or subtract what I call an a personal enjoyment modifier. I only know how to do this. Anyway, that's how I work it out. And as always, we start with intellectual. So let's be honest, this is not a deep album. This is not exactly philosophical content. This is not mind-changing stuff or mind-bending stuff. What it is really, for me, wildly inventive lyrics, just kind of about a day glow, planetscapes and comets and atoms swirling through the cosmos. Wild stuff, wild colors. The album cover, I think, almost says it, what you get lyrically in word format, or you probably get what I'm saying. It's bright, it's bold, it's wacky, it's unusual. It's also playfully dark at times, and that has me at moments listening to this album, like thinking about Jason Bieler, he of the Baron von Bielski Orchestra. I can speak. But anyway, maybe I'll start this section over. I'm tripping all over the place. So this is not a deep album, and I don't know that it claims to be. What it does have a lot of is very wildly inventive lyrics about day-glow planetscapes and comets and atoms swirling through the cosmos and things coming at you and falling through the sky. And, you know, when you look at the album cover and all the bright colors and bold lines and shapes, the lyrics are that in word form. Best way to describe it I can think of. It's also playfully dark at times, reminiscent of some of Jason Bieler's work, in just the sense that it's like it comes up with these dark ideas, and some of these things sound dark, but at the same time, it's all a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't feel like it takes itself very seriously at all, and I like that, really. I mean, it's a cool idea for a concept album. I don't know how hard they are really adhering to that format. They're not telling a story or anything like that. They're just throwing a bunch of ideas out there and little concepts, but it's kind of cool stuff. And it's really fun to listen to. And I think that's maybe a key word for this album. So ultimately, these are more likely to provoke sing-alongs than they are deep pondering. That's all I'm saying. But I enjoy that. So I am scoring this one a 3.5. Next, we move on to innovative. Now, this would be, I think, maybe my first time hearing something described as synth metal. I don't know if they are the ones that originated the term. I don't know if it's exclusive to them. I don't know if there are other bands out there that are synth metal. I'd be curious to hear about some of those. But it's a new thing to me. So I can't exactly say if that in itself, that idea, is innovative. It seems very new and unusual to this guy, which is cool. I dig it. It very dance hall-ish, things like that. I don't know what you would say. It's not what I would call industrial, but it maybe has flavors of that. Bit dance hall, definitely flavors of that. Listening back to the first album, that one was a bit more like spacey, sludgy, synth-driven metal, like a little bit like an angry Thomas Dolby by way of early Pink Floyd, if you can think of that. Or, maybe if Mastodon had all synths instead of any guitars. It's the best way to describe it. It was more complex, it was more off-tempo, it was more unusual. This one, to me, the difference being it's much more groove-oriented, much more propulsive, much more, dare I say it, danceable. Seems to be the idea that they wanted to make something a little bit danceable, but damn it, prog noggins don't dance. If you expect me to do more than this at a concert, damn it, Brann, I don't know what you expect from me, man. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Not a dancer. But anyway, maybe this isn't geared towards the prog noggins of the world. Don't know. Ultimately, what I will say is it's very infectious and probably a good bit more accessible than the last album, and maybe more accessible to a lot of people than a lot of prog music is. Take that for good or bad. You could decide that on your own. What I do is I give them credit for evolving rather than staying pat with what they were doing, rather than making this a continuation of the first album. So kudos to them for that. I'm going to score this one a 4. Next section, technical. I would say this is not quite as spacey. Yes, that's a pun. As the first album, nor is it as complex. Still, it's quite dense and quite complex in its own right, in its own way. The danceable grooves, for me, the rhythms and all that are really impressive, given that Brann is still approaching this almost as if it were a Mastodon album. He is playing with all the power and all the fury and all the frenzy that you tend to hear in a Mastodon album, with a few exceptions here and there where he makes things much more basic. There's still a lot going on there. He is still bringing it to the kit, and yet somehow does it in a manner that allows the main grooves and the main beat to carry it and make it danceable. It's an impressive thing he's doing there. I wouldn't have expected him to be quite so busy and yet still make something that is essentially danceable and approachable. There is a lot happening in this album. There's a lot of layers to the synths and the drums, and the vocals are definitely very creative, both in the melodies and the way they're processed when they do have process. But the grooves, ultimately, with all that happening, the grooves are undeniable. That's all I can say. Which is part of the reason I think that this one grew on me so quickly. It really took me by surprise in that sense. So for this one, I am also scoring it a 4. And finally, we get to emotional. Well, it starts off with a philosophical question here, which will have to remain rhetorical because none of you are here at the moment to answer me. Anyway, is fun an emotion? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is. Ultimately, though, I was surprised at how much fun this album is. I wasn't sure what to expect. I came into this with a very kind of a blank slate concept. I had not listened to the first album before I listened to this one. But in some ways, maybe I shouldn't be surprised it's fun. I had taken note of the video for Fuzzy Planet, which, features Brann in this sort of stylish clown makeup kind of thing going on, singing to a bunch of dancing and weirdly sexy aliens. I might have a new kink. I don't know. But it was quite a surprise and how much I enjoyed this. And it really ends up standing out among the albums I reviewed this year just for the sense of wild fun and the insistent grooves and the tongue-in-cheek approach. This is a cool little album. It doesn't hit me in the feels like that. It doesn't, make me sad. It doesn't make me joyful. It's just fun. So in this case, I'm at least considering fun to be a partial emotion. So I'm going to give it a 3.5 for this section. So now we get to recap. Where does that give us? That gives us intellectual, 3.5, innovative, 4, technical, 4, and emotional, 3.5. You do some quick math and you find that all averages out to a 3.75. Very common number here on Bleeding Edge, if you've been following along. So well. Meanwhile, some of my additional thoughts here. I really had no idea what I was getting into with this one. All I can say is ultimately I was intrigued by the description and the involvement of Brann. And Brann, if you don't know much about Mastodon, you might not realize he's a bit of a goofball. He's a fun guy. And I think one thing always stands out for me is early in my relationship with my girlfriend, knowing how much she loved Mastodon and knowing that a Mastodon Opeth show was our first date. Yeah, it's a cool fucking first date, right? She really was into them. And I happened to come up with the idea of getting Brann to do a cameo for her. I don't know if they're still doing those anymore, but I remember that was a thing at least a little bit at the time. And the dude was just totally cool. He nailed it. He nailed it. He was fun. He was funny. He was cute. He did all the things that you would expect. So to a degree, maybe I shouldn't be so surprised at what the result of this album is. But I definitely was intrigued, and I was curious what it was going to be. Ultimately, though, I got to say, too, I was really impressed with his vocals on this album because the level of warmth that he exudes on several of the tracks really caught me by surprise. At times he's wild and he's wacky, and yet at many places he is very warm with this kind of tenor croon that he has. And it just sort of surprised me because that's not something you really hear on a Mastodon album. You maybe hear it in a different vein, a little bit in a different degree, but there were just points here I'm like, wow, like the dude really does have a great voice and could do almost any kind of music he wanted to. Maybe he should do some Sinatra covers. I mean, if Tremonti can do it, why not Brann, right? So it really surprised me, and I was impressed with it. I got to say that was one of the big surprises of this as well. Not to say I thought he couldn't sing very well. It's just how much warmer it was. It's just the only way I can think to describe it. Meanwhile, I really do dig the almost self-deprecating and wildly imaginative vibe they've got going on here. Again, it definitely feels like it would pair very nicely with a lot of Jason Bieler music. And it's actually made me think that I have a dream supergroup that I am trying to manifest and put out in the world so it happens. And to get Brann and Core Adams from Arcadea here to join forces with Jason and Les Claypool. Somebody needs to make that happen. I think that would be absolutely off the wall and a blast of a project. So somebody please make that happen. Somebody out there put the bug in one of their ears and make it happen, please. All right, as always, standout songs we talk about. The album's really, really consistent, to be perfectly honest, and makes it hard to really pull anything out as being much better than the others. In the end, I think the two that really, though, did stand out for me for kind of different reasons. Fuzzy Planet, one of the lead singles, a great hook, great vocals by Brann. I think that one is maybe the best example of that warmth that he really was exuding on this one. And it's got a great beat. I can dance to it. I don't dance, but I could if I wanted to. I could. But it's really just a really immediate song that just grabs you. And the one right after it, Lake of Rust, from the opening Masters of the Universe sample to the crushing metallic synth riffs to the piano-infused half-tempo midsection, that one is just super cool. I really dig that song, and it really is just kind of a pummeling synth riff. It's just very nice in a very minor chord kind of way. All right, so in the end, this one for me was definitely a grower, and I'm absolutely glad I took the time to check it out. I almost didn't, but I'm glad I did. I'd say my enjoyment of it actually goes beyond the numbers. So 3.75 is not enough. I am adding a 0.25 to the final score, and that gives us a final score of 4. Now, what about the rest of you? Have you all out there in YouTube land, have you listened to this one? Have you given it a spin? What did you think? If you heard the original, do you think this is better than the original? Is it a natural progression? Is it something else? Yeah, you think it's too out there for a member of Mastodon? I don't know. Mastodon can be a little bit out there themselves when they want to. I want to know your opinions. Jump into the comments section. Let me know. It's what it's there for. And while you're doing that, if you could take a moment, subscribe to the channel, help us reach 1,000. That would be very cool, and I'd much appreciate it. And as always, finally, I leave you with the reminder to never fear to deviate from the norm. And as always, keep it proggy.